Dear viewers, our topic today is the representation of subaltern classes. The term subaltern is originally a British military term which is used to describe a junior officer in the army. It was first popularized by Antonio Gramsci. He used this term to describe those classes of people who had little political and cultural power and who possessed the general attribute of subordination. The term subaltern became very popular during the 1990s, and it was used to refer to disenfranchised segments of populations, classes, races, cultures, and genders. According to Gramsci, the history of a nation is almost always seen as the history of the elite classes, and the subalterns are erased from this history as though they have no identity or beliefs. They do not have the right to represent themselves. Gramsci suggested that the subaltern classes were as complicated as the elites, and it was only the structure of political and economic power that kept them out of the nation's histories and representations. Within post-colonial context, the subaltern might be defined as the racial, cultural, gendered, and ethnic subordinate of the white colonial, the product of colonial hegemonic practices and discourses. Post-colonial studies focuses on structures of power and forms of discourse that exclude the experiences, life stories, belief systems, and knowledge production of particular groups of people, such as tribals or aborigines, from the discourse of the nation. The colonized was seen as the subaltern race because it was unable to find a place in the European writing. When European writers wrote histories of India, they did not refer to native sources or structures of thinking, or they dismissed these as irrelevant. The colonized subject was forever condemned to be represented by and spoken for by the colonizer. However, a group of writers were free from this bias. That is why they focused on marginal groups and their contributions to history. They also paid attention to the belief systems of the marginalized. Subaltern studies propose that tribal, aboriginal, and local forms of resistance, including voodoo, rumor, ghost stories, and religion, should be deemed to be political, because for too long the political had been defined in particular ways only, and had rejected alternate forms of expression of dissent or anger. Furthermore, this group of historians proposed that subaltern studies needs to resurrect alternative knowledge traditions, since traditional and official histories, both colonial and nationalist, had ignored ways of knowledge production and reasoning by classifying these as non-knowledge. Thus, in colonialism, alternate non-Western forms of knowledge in language, science, and medicine were systematically marginalized. In this connection, Spivak argues that one cannot escape essentializing the subaltern. Even though we claim to let the subaltern speak for herself, in simple words, it means that the subaltern are dependent upon others for their representation. Spivak further argues that subalterns are themselves divided, uneven, and heterogeneous, and to imply a uniform category of the subaltern was to homogenize them. What is more, subalterns always remain the subjects of others' representations, lacking a voice in which to articulate themselves. It implies that subalternity is constituted within particular discourses such as nationalism, class, and patriarchy, where in some groups, individuals, languages, and forms of thought are deemed to be subordinate. Since the late 1990s, a paradigm shift has taken place in the subaltern studies, and the quest to identify subaltern groups and communities has given place to the discourses within which subalterns are made. As a result, a textual rather than empirical emphasis has been increasingly visible in the later volumes of the subaltern studies. Despite the attempts of the critics like Bhabha to assign a greater role for the subaltern, material realities have ensured they remain dominated. The nature of subalternity has always been controversial. For instance, whether the subalterns are conscious of their oppression and that this leads them to revolt is a moot point. Despite such criticism, subaltern studies has not lost its prestige. It has made a significant contribution in the literary analysis of post-colonial texts. To conclude, it can be said that the word subaltern is a derogatory term as it conveys the associations of subjugation. Yet subaltern studies strives to restore the prestige of the subaltern class and contributes significantly to their representation in literature. Thank you very much.